Born in the 1950s, Gray Fox, also known as Frank Yeager, was a mercenary and former agent of the United States Special Forces unit, Foxhound. Originally a child soldier who fought in Mozambique, Frank Yeager spent his early years fighting as a child soldier for the Frelimo guerrilla fighters in the Mozambique War of Independence. Known for his cruel war tactics, he would trick enemies into letting their guard down, acting with the franklessness of a young boy before killing them with the ruthlessness of a hunter. In 1966, newly promoted Big Boss became acquainted with Yeager in Mozambique after stopping him in battle and placed the young boy in a rehabilitation facility, believing that he would be safe. While at the rehab center, Yeager was taken by the CIA and used as a test subject for the Perfect Soldier project. The project turned the boy into a much more efficient soldier, capable of killing his targets without remorse. In 1970, Frank Yeager was given the name the Perfect Soldier, and during the events of the Sierra-Leone takeover, he was pitted against Big Boss but was unable to defeat him. During his fight against Big Boss, Frank Yeager was haunted by memories of his past, and after losing his fight against Big Boss offered to help him recover his broken mind and was sent to a hospital alongside Big Boss's ally Roy Campbell to see if he could be treated for his physical and mental damages. After recovering from the events of the Sierra-Leone takeover, Frank Yeager returned to the battlefield in 1979 during the Rhodesian Civil War and was responsible for killing the parents of a young girl. But filled with guilt, he chose to adopt the young girl and care for her as his sister. This little girl would grow up to become Dr. Naomi Hunter. During the 1990s, Frank Yeager was trained alongside a fellow agent named David, and both would become members of the special unit Foxhound. But Frank Yeager would receive the title Fox, while his friend and fellow agent David would receive the code name Solid Snake. In 1995, however, Frank Yeager, now going under the code name Gray Fox, was assigned to Operation Intrude N-312 to recover information on a newly designed weapon. However, his mission was a complete failure and he was later captured, only to be rescued by Solid Snake, only for both of them to discover that the secret weapon was a newly designed model of Metal Gear. After learning that the commander of the Foxhound unit, Big Boss, was responsible for this event, Gray Fox left Foxhound and sided himself with Big Boss in order to seek out new goals alongside his commander and longtime friend. 4 years later, during the Zanzibar land riots, Gray Fox would now face his former ally Solid Snake in battle, but would be defeated alongside his commander Big Boss, who was at the time presumed dead. After the fall of Big Boss, Gray Fox, now badly injured, would be recovered by the Patriots, and through cybernetic surgery became a guinea pig for Foxhound's chief medic, Dr. Clark, and her genotherapy experiments. However, Gray Fox's adopted sister, Naomi Hunter, would go undercover to join the Foxhound unit to help rescue him, and although she was successful and would help Gray Fox kill Dr. Clark, who was now at the time known to be one of the founding members of the Patriots, his mind was so badly damaged that it left only a single desire to fight Solid Snake once again. In 2005, during the Shadow Moses incident, with the help of his sister Naomi Hunter, Gray Fox was able to track down Solid Snake once again and face him in battle. However, later on during Solid Snake's mission, Gray Fox would join forces with Snake in order to help him battle the newly designed Metal Gear Rex, which was now being piloted by Solid Snake's twin genetic brother, Liquid Snake. During the battle, however, Gray Fox's arm was completely cut off and he was crushed under the foot of Metal Gear Rex. His last words to Solid Snake would be the driving motivation to Solid Snake's long life goal to destroy all Metal Gear weapons. Samuel Rodriguez was descended from a long line of swordsmen dating back all the way to the 16th century Japan. His father ran a Brazilian Kenjutsu dojo and specifically taught the Uridachi technique, also better known as the murdering sword, which dealt with violence as an end goal. Sam's father was eventually killed by one of his pupils, who was believed to have been a member of the drug cartels. After Sam inherited his Murasama blade from his father, he then left Brazil and traveled around the world training and honing his skills, and would eventually hunt down and kill the pupil who had actually killed his father. After avenging his father's death, Sam would travel the world as a mercenary and took various odd jobs, including a job as a bodyguard and as a cleaner for the mafia. He also made a name for himself in the criminal underworld, especially within South and Central America, with one story being that he managed to take down a hit squad composed of 10 mob enforcers with automatic weapons using only his sword during the early 2000s, at a time when cybernetic technology was available. Over time, Sam would eventually modify his father's Mursama blade into a high-frequency blade with an ID lock. As combative technology improved, Sam eventually began to use an enhancement suit to better improve his combative performance, and as his reputation grew, he caught the eye of Senator Steve Armstrong. After learning that Senator Armstrong was involved with the World Marshal, an organization that sent soldiers to battle for selfish reasons, Sam made it a personal mission of his to kill Armstrong. After infiltrating Senator Armstrong's main building and fighting through his forces sent against him, Sam would encounter Armstrong himself and would engage him in combat. Though he fought well against Armstrong, he was eventually defeated and lost his right arm in battle. Armstrong, impressed by Sam's skills, offered him a job to work with him, and seeing no other options, Sam accepted Armstrong's offer. Sam was granted a prosthetic arm and took part in a series of special missions for Armstrong in an attempt to gain more power. While on a mission to capture the African Prime Minister, he would encounter for the first time the Maverick agent Raiden. Sam and Raiden would fight on board a moving train, and though Raiden fought hard against Sam, he was defeated and lost not only his left composite artificial eye, but his left arm too. Raiden took the defeat by Sam extremely personal and would return to the battlefield after going through a complete overhaul of his body, granting him even a higher, greater combative performance level to challenge Sam once again. After Raiden had finished killing off all of Sam's fellow high-ranking mercenaries, he would make his way to the Badlands of Colorado, where Sam was waiting for him for their final battle. As Sam's final remaining ally Blade withstood by, Raiden and Sam took part in an intense sword fight which pushed the two of them to their combative limits. But when the dust finally cleared, it was Raiden who stood victorious after successfully slashing Sam fatally. In his final moments, Sam passed on his sword to Wolfblade and gave him instructions to do what he wished with his sword. During Raiden's final battle with Armstrong, Wolfblade would pass on Sam's sword to Raiden, who would successfully use it to finish off Armstrong once and for all. Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian here at 3TR. I'm here to present my second Versus Series matchup for my third season, and sadly it appears that this will most likely be my final Metal Gear Solid style matchup. So to end the series of matchups, I figured that I would go pretty simple by pitting a fan favorite in the Cyborg Ninja Gray Fox against the newcomer Cyborg Samurai Sam Jetstream. And with that out of the way, it is now time to compare and contrast, and I shall start by comparing them physically. Due to the amount of complete damage Gray Fox took as a result of his defeat by Solid Snake during the events of the Zanzibar Land Riot, along with having his body blown apart due to a landmine, Gray Fox's body had to be rebuilt through cybernetic surgery, which included a prosthetic right hand and a powered exoskeleton that was grafted directly onto his body by inserting a cybernetic module at the skeletal level, granting Fox enhanced strength and agility. Though he was well past his physical prime, being in his early to mid-50s by the time of the Shadow Moses incident, Gray Fox's exoskeleton enabled him to jump great heights and move his body in ways that his original body could not. He was also able to move his body fast enough to dodge bullets fired at him from Metal Gear Rex's machine guns, and it is in my personal theory that at some point, even without the use of his auto-cam tech, he could move his body faster than the human eye could see. Though the material of his exoskeleton itself was rather tough, it seemed to be able to not protect Gray Fox's organic body from harm, as Solid Snake was able to damage Gray Fox enough to force him into a retreat despite the fact that they were simply fist fighting during their second fight at Shadow Moses. Along with having his entire left arm cut completely off due to Metal Gear Rex's laser beam, and being pinned to the wall by Metal Gear Rex's cockpit hub to the point where Gray Fox was unable to move, only to be completely flattened by the force of the weight of Rex's foot, it is my theory that Gray Fox's exoskeleton had a similar function to old Snake's muscle suit, and the fact that it enabled a badly broken body to function at a normal rate, or in Gray Fox's case, a superhuman rate. Not much is officially known about Sam, but by the time of his death in 2018, estimates would place him at being at the tail end of his physical prime, putting him in his late 30s. During his early life, thanks to his extensive training, Sam was in extremely good shape, allowing him an exceptionally high performance level with use of his blade. After he had applied very little cybernetic augmentations to himself, his physical capabilities and reflexes were enhanced even higher to superhuman levels, granting him even higher levels of durability, speed, strength, and stamina. The only physical defects that Sam had was that due to his failed engagement that he had with Senator Armstrong, he lost his right arm and replaced it with a prosthetic right arm as a replacement. This replacement, however, did not seem to affect his overall combative performance, and it seems to have allowed him the same exact performance level as his organic arm did. Though he has the title of the Cyborg Samurai, unlike his fellow mercenaries under Armstrong's employment, Samuel was certainly more man than machine. Now this department is pretty obvious to call, but just like all my previous matchups involving users who use body enhancements throughout the Metal Gear Solid franchise, I'll be judging them both within and outside of their suits, and unfortunately for Gray Fox, he is simply outclassed in both areas. Without their suits, Gray Fox would literally be unable to even move, as the amount of damage done to his body was so severe that he was ultimately nothing more but a vegetable, while Sam would still be able to operate effectively and would certainly even be able to hold his own against opponents who do operate with use of physical enhancements. While wearing their suits, both of them would be able to match each other in terms of speed and strength to some degree, but it would be with Sam's superior durability and stamina that would ultimately give him the edge. Gray Fox's exoskeleton simply allowed a crippled and vegetated body the ability to apply a somewhat similar combative performance that he had during his time as the Perfect Soldier 30 years ago in his youth, while Sam's minimalistic use of cybernetic enhancements simply adds on to his already highly toned physical combat capabilities, and it is for these reasons that I give Sam the edge in physical capabilities. By the time of the Shadow Moses incident, Gray Fox's array of ornament and battle tech was very limited, but in his hands was extremely effective. Gray Fox used a choker sword model from around the 8th century, and the sword itself measured at about 40 inches from the hilt to the tip of the blade. A distinct feature of the chocador was its straight blade, similar to the ancient swords found by the Three Kingdom periods of China. With this weapon design, it is clear that it was best used as a slashing and thrusting weapon, and Gray Fox had also equipped it an arm-mounted cannon capable of firing energy projectiles. From doing some research on the weapon itself, I was able to determine that this weapon could fire off about 20 shots before it ran out of ammunition. On the tech side of things, Gray Fox's exoskeleton came in with a built-in stealth camouflage, allowing him to remain undetected even in the center of an enemy's compound. The exoskeleton could also be demonstrated to emit electromagnetic waves that could cause radars to short out should the wearer be in close proximity. With one of Gray Fox's titles of being known as the Cyborg Ninja, it is clear that his array of weapons and tech aided the notion of being quiet but deadly. Sam only carried one official weapon during his career as a mercenary, and it was his family's sword dubbed the Murasama, which was passed from generation to generation down the Rodriguez family line since the time of his ancestors. Sam later modified to make it a high-frequency blade, improving its already excellent quality metal and power, and he even inserted an ID block which made sure that no one else but him could use the weapon. The high-frequency Murasama sword measured at about 4 feet long from the butt of the handle to the tip of the blade. The blade itself was modified to a red-crimson metal which allowed it to cause more damage when striking either flesh or even armored material. Sam even went out of his way to create a uniquely designed sheath for the sword and shaped it to look more like a gun, and thanks to an explosive charge, Sam, after pressing the trigger, could eject the sword out of the sheath to execute blows at lightning speeds, and they were so powerful that his blows were believed to be completely unstoppable, making Samuel's high-frequency Murasama sword the single most dangerous blade in all of Metal Gear. This department is also pretty straightforward to call, as it plays out as a classic case of Gray Fox's quantity with his diverse series of weapons and equipment versus Samuel's quality with his high-frequency Murasama sword. and in terms of pure equipment, I see Gray Fox having the slight advantage in this area, as he simply has more combative options at his disposal which will allow him to change the pace of the fight itself if needed. Therefore, I grant Gray Fox the edge in weapons and equipment. Like all my previous matchups involving sword fighters, I will be using Star Wars lightsaber fighting forms to help describe the martial, combative, and tactical approaches of both Gray Fox and Sam in this contest. And with that statement out of the way, by the time of the Shadow Moses incident, Gray Fox had been through more than 40 years of combat. During his early life when he was known as the Perfect Soldier, Gray Fox's skills with bladed weapons began when he was simply a child, and from that time on, he self-taught himself on the field of battle. His combat design was based off the notion that he would be a sword-wielding combatant operating in the modern times of warfare. And because of this, his tactical approaches had to be capable of dealing with groups of opponents at once that would all be using firearms, and using his highly enhanced speed and reflexes to which he could easily overwhelm his opponents and catch them off guard. Due to this, Gray Fox's skill set would have made him a well-rounded user of Forms 1 Sicho to deal with groups of opponents, Form 3 Surisu to deal with projectile defense, and Form 4 Ataru for mobility and the use of jumps and flips to resemble a blur of offensive motion. However, despite Gray Fox's offensive might, his tactical approaches were still bogged down with problems. For starters, despite Gray Fox's offensive application, it seemed he was not nearly as effective in combat when he was forced to go up against a single, well-trained opponent, as shown in his engagements against Big Boss, Gene, and Solid Snake. And despite what some of you may think, I do not believe that Gray Fox spent a great deal of time improving his skills with the blade during his time with Foxhound, and only began reusing bladed weapons after his reconstruction as a result of him being crippled during the Zanzibarland riots. And because of his nature of his reconstruction that left Gray Fox completely incapable to take part in a long-term head-on-head engagement, because of this, Gray Fox's standard approach was based on relying fast encounters to quickly and decisively overwhelm his opponents and immediately engage another. Gray Fox's second tactical weakness was that he was incapable of responding properly to maneuvers or techniques that he was not prepared for or was not expecting, which, in the heat of a battle, could cause Gray Fox to be caught off guard quite easily. Despite Gray Fox's weaknesses in a purely offensive manner, he did have a reliable fallback tactical approach at his disposal. If he ever encountered an opponent that he could not simply overwhelm his barrage of sword attacks, Gray Fox could choose to put away his sword in an attempt to engage with his highly advanced hand-to-hand combat skills. But though he was trained alongside Solid Snake during their time together in Foxhound, it is clear that Solid Snake's skills in hand-to-hand combat were superior. Apart from that, thanks to his Foxhound training, he was also very well skilled in relying on the use of stealth techniques and maneuvers during the Shadow Moses incident, and would take full advantage of his stealth camouflage technology and attacking opponents where they least expected it. However, he would only rely on this approach if he was given no other choice. During Sam's early life, he was trained by his father at their family Kenjutsu dojo, and was specifically taught the Yuridachi technique, or better known as the murdering sword, which dealt with violence as an end goal. Being trained to fight similar to that of a samurai and having such a toned muscular build would have made Sam an exceptional combatant against other sword-wielding opponents. Sam is also able to handle himself without his sword, being able to take Raiden down in hand-to-hand combat, and was even able to disarm him using a very judo-ish style to catch Raiden's sword with his hands. Thanks to his martial training, he was also taught to relying on using his principal senses in battle. His senses were so highly toned that he was even able to detect opponents that were using stealth camouflage technique and avoid their attacks. Due to his reputation of having been able to take down an entire hit squad composed of 10 mob enforcers with automatic machine guns using only his sword with exceptional speed and reflexes, would have made Sam quite the innovator of being able to tool such a traditional fighting sword style to be able to contend with multiple opponents firing projectiles. Because of this, Sam would have been a master practitioner in Forms 2 Mikashi and Form 5 Shien/Gem So. Form 4 Mikashi, also known as the Contention form, was designed specifically for blade-on-blade combat. Mikashi was described as elegant and focused, and was based on balance and footwork to outmaneuver opponents. Fluidity, precision, and economy of motion were relied on rather than strength, and and with its blade work heavily utilizing jabs and light cuts to bypass an opponent and attack in an exposed area, with the form's only weaknesses being its lack of kinetic energy making it difficult to apply dedicated power blows, and its focus on fluidity making it difficult to defend against dedicated power blows. Form 5 had two variations. Both Xian and Jimso were designed to use an opponent's attacks against them, as evident by Xian's focus on returning projectile shots back at their origins, and Jimso's emphasis on immediately counterattacking. Ironically, this focus on defend and immediately counterattacking was Sam's greatest weakness as a combatant, as it was shown during his second fight against Raiden that whenever he would attack first, he had a tendency to leave himself open to Raiden's countermaneuvers. It is my belief that the reason for Sam's success as a combatant was due to his physical superiority, as during his first fight against Raiden, because of his physical superiority, Raiden could not properly withstand and defend against Sam's techniques. But once Raiden got a complete total body upgrade that could match Sam's combative physical performance, he found himself running into serious difficulty now fighting an opponent who was not only familiar with his combative approach, but could match his performance. It's easy to see at face value that Gray Fox and Sam are two completely different combatants whose skill sets and experience in combat has allowed them to keen on two different types of engagements. Gray Fox the ninja tooled for dispatching multiple opponents at once, and Sam the samurai prone for one-on-one engagements. And from that statement alone, it is clear that Sam would have a clear advantage in this category. I'm not saying by any means that Gray Fox is weak as a combatant, but his own combative history has proven time and time again that his skill set and experience is simply not designed for single combat, as he has literally lost every single solo engagement he has taken part in over the course of his life. While Sam has proven that not only does he have an understanding of the type of fighting approach that Gray Fox would attempt to use against him, but he knows how to respond properly. And what's worse is that Gray Fox simply lacks the means to be able to take any kind of advantage against Sam in a one-on-one contest. Trying to rely on his typical speed offense would get him nowhere. His physicality is incapable of being able to put up any significant defense to hold off Sam's offense, and when that fails, Gray Fox would attempt to rely on his stealth techniques and technology, but Sam would simply respond in kind, as that very same stealth camouflage technology had been around for at least 13 years, meaning that it's nothing that Sam hasn't seen before, and his own developed senses would allow him to strike out at Gray Fox even if he is cloaked. This entire category analysis plays out into one of my biggest issues I've always had when it comes to ninjas and how they are portrayed. In my opinion, ninjas are not so much warriors, but assassins. Their title of being known as Masters of the Silent Kill reflects their need to get in and out of a situation quickly as possible and not attempt for a long-standing engagement. The only reason a ninja would enjoy any kind of success against a samurai is if they A. catch their opponent off guard, or B. attack them with a technique or weapon that the samurai would not be expecting. But once the samurai was allowed to rally and turn this engagement into a sword-on-sword fight, the ninja would be at an immediate disadvantage, as they would be attempting to beat the samurai at their own game, which often most would lead to a disaster for a ninja, and that is exactly what we have here. Gray Fox simply lacks the means to provide any kind of serious threat to Sam in a martial and tactical sense, and it is for these reasons I give Sam the edge in martial skills and as a battle tactician. As I'm sure many of you have figured out by this point, at the end of the day, there is no question that Gray Fox simply cannot win this fight in any capacity. He physically cannot compete with Sam, and though Gray Fox may have a slight speed advantage, it's nothing that Sam can't deal with easily, as his own cybernetic augmentations and his own natural physical build would grant Sam a significant physical edge in every other department. Gray Fox may have a much larger and diverse collection of weapons and equipment at his disposal, but in all honesty, it's really not that much of an edge. Gray Fox's Chocodo sword does not even compare one bit to Samuel's high-frequency Murasama sword. Gray Fox's energy projectiles with his arm-mounted cannon could be easily evaded by Sam's own enhanced speed. Gray Fox's exoskeleton's ability to emit electromagnetic waves would have zero effect on Sam, and Gray Fox's final trick of using his stealth camouflage technology would be pointless, as Sam's own heightened senses would allow him to detect Gray Fox's movements even if he is cloaked. And Gray Fox's martial skills and tactical approaches are not only not flexible enough, but they are simply not designed for this type of fight. Now, in Gray Fox's defense, and to refer back to my 2 previous matchups involving Gray Fox, in Gray Fox vs. Metal Gear Solid 4 Raiden, despite Raiden using a much earlier in development fighting style that he would clearly improve upon during the events of Metal Gear Rising, the reason why Gray Fox would have the advantage as a swordsman is because his skill set is better toned and experience, while Raiden during that time was still reteaching his new body on how to perform in combat while learning new techniques that his body could perform, hence why he was making so many mistakes that Gray Fox could take advantage of. And Raiden at that point would only be able to win against Gray Fox due to his physical advantage and his intimate understanding of Gray Fox's capable approaches. The primary reason why Gray Fox will be able to defeat someone like Solidus, despite him clearly having the physical and weapon advantage over Fox, is simply due to the fact that his stealth technology and techniques would allow him to catch Solidus off guard and attack him at his weak point. But against someone as highly disciplined and experienced as Sam, he would experience no such advantage. Now, this fight would play out in a very similar fashion to the first fight between Batman and Bane in the film adaptation of The Dark Knight Rises, with Gray Fox filling in the role of Batman and Sam playing the role of Bane. Gray Fox would open up with a total offensive barrage of attacks, and Sam would go on the defense in order to better analyze Gray Fox's skill set, and he would even allow Gray Fox to get in a few hits out of pity, but he would be taking nothing that his cybernetic augmentations and his own physical build couldn't take. Sam would then counter with his own offense and would begin driving Gray Fox back, his own physical superiority being too much for Gray Fox. Fox would then attempt to retaliate, but would be forced back once again, his skills with the blade proving to be inferior to Sam's. Gray Fox would then fire off his energy projectiles from his arm-mounted cannon at Sam, but all the rounds would be easily evaded by Sam's own enhanced speed. Trying a new approach, he would then fire off a series of electromagnetic waves at Sam, but they would prove to be completely ineffective as Sam continues his slow approach towards Gray Fox. Fox would then attempt to go on the offense once more, but he would be immediately stopped in his place and forced back, most likely taking a few physical blows from Sam, causing some serious internal damage. Seeing no other choice, Gray Fox jumps back a good number of meters and activates his stealth camouflage, disappearing from Sam's direct sight. But Sam simply smiles, realizing just how desperate his opponent has become now. Sam centers himself and concentrates on his senses. After a few moments, even while Gray Fox is still cloaked, he would leap out at Sam, attempting to strike out at his head, but Sam would be expecting this and would easily be able to detect Gray Fox's movements, and using his highly toned reflexes is able to deliver a precision slash, removing Gray Fox's arm, immediately disabling the cloak. Gray Fox would then fall to his knees, defeated. Sam would then raise his blade to Gray Fox's neck, and as it is the way of the samurai, would remove Gray Fox's head from his body. And thus I declare Sam, the cyborg samurai, the winner. And that concludes my final Metal Gear Solid vs. Series matchup. Now remember, like always, this outcome is just my own personal opinion. Do you agree that Sam is simply too much of a powerful combatant for Gray Fox to deal with? Or do you believe that Gray Fox could come up with some creative or clever maneuver that will grant him the victory? Share your thoughts with me and everybody else in the comments down below, and please remember to be respectful in the comments. I do these videos for fun, not to create conflicts. If you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe to keep track of me and my future Versus Series matchups, and like always, thank you guys for watching, you're awesome, and here's a sneak preview of my next 3TR Versus Series matchup.